Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be diving into a topic that's both fascinating and terrifying,
Oh, yeah?
the Mind Flayer. You guys have provided some amazing source material for us, really diving into their mysterious past, their bizarre physiology,
Yeah,
and that really complex relationship with the Githyanki.
it is.
So, um, yeah, let's get right into it. Where did these things even come from? What's their ultimate goal?
Yeah.
And how do they end up with such formidable enemies?
Well, that's the thing, right? Even with all this great material we have, there's still so much we just don't know about them. It's like they exist just outside of our understanding.
Yeah, like shrouded in this layer of mystery.
Totally.
But okay, let's at least start with what we do know. The sources are pretty consistent when it comes to describing their appearance.
Uh,
And let me tell you, these creatures are the stuff of nightmares.
right.
Like imagine a being that's both humanoid and monstrously alien at the same time.
It's true. The descriptions really paint a vivid picture. That soft, rubbery skin, that sickly mauve color, always slick with that glistening slime.
Ugh. Okay, I'm getting the creeps already.
And then there's the head. Well, I guess you could call it a head, but it's more like a giant octopus.
Oh, God.
With these purplish black tentacles writhing around this lamprey-like mouth.
Okay, stop. Stop.
It's scary.
I can only handle so much, and then those pale, pupilless eyes,
Yeah.
like it's staring right through you,
Oh, yeah?
dissecting your thoughts before they even get to the brain eating.
Yeah, it's unsettling.
It is. It really is. And then it just keeps getting weirder when you look at the hands and feet. They have these long, slender hands, but they're missing an index finger.
Yeah.
And then the feet are webbed with only 2 toes.
It's like they're pieced together from different evolutionary blueprints.
Exactly. It's so bizarre.
Huh.
And maybe that bizarre physical form is just a reflection of their whole fragmented history and mythology.
That's an interesting thought.
Right. Because speaking of that, where did these things even come from? The sources throw around some pretty wild theories.
Yeah.
Time travelers, mutants from another dimension. Like, is there any kind of consensus on their origins?
Not really, no. And their whole messed up relationship with time makes it almost impossible to really trace their origins. They seem to exist only in the present.
Right.
The past is irrelevant to them, and the future is just an extension of now.
So it's like trying to track a creature that doesn't leave any footprints.
Yeah, exactly. They don't care about recording their own history, so all we have is this jumbled mess of myths and legends. Some think they come from the far realm, which is this crazy dimension that our minds can't even really comprehend.
I've heard of that.
Others think it was some ancient magical experiment that went terribly wrong.
Yeah.
And then there's the time traveler theory, which just throws another wrench in the whole thing.
Which is just so weird. So are they intentionally hiding their origins?
I mean, it's possible. Maybe they're ashamed of it, or maybe they just like the mystery, you know?
Yeah.
It keeps people afraid.
It definitely works. Whatever their origins are, though, they've definitely left their mark on the multiverse. The sources talk about those conflicts they've had, like the Mindstalker Wars against the dwarves of Xanatar.
Right, right.
That points to a pretty deep ambition for conquest and domination, doesn't it?
For sure. And then there's the whole conquest of Gauntlgrim, which was this incredible dwarven city that the Mind Flayers just completely took over.
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, and it's like this really grim reminder of just how ruthless they can be. Even though these historical snippets are just fragments, they show a past filled with violence and subjugation.
And then that brings us to the Githyanki, who are maybe the most interesting piece of this whole Mind Flayer puzzle. The sources describe them as this race that was forged in rebellion against the Mind Flayers, against that tyranny. They're tall and slender with yellow skin, these intense black eyes, and they have a warrior culture that's laser focused on just wiping out the Mind Flayers, their former oppressors.
It's true. The Githyankis are such a study in contrasts. You know, they're almost elegant, especially when you compare them to those grotesque Mind Flayers.
Yeah.
But they share that connection through psionic power.
Right.
And it's believed that generations of being enslaved and experimented on by the Mind Flayers actually unlocked their psionic potential.
So they took the Mind Flayers' own weapons and turned them against them. Talk about poetic justice.
Oh, yeah. And the Githyanki hate for Mind Flayers runs deep. It's what defines their entire culture, their martial traditions, even their connection to the astral plane, that timeless realm where they've built their own empire.
Yeah, so they're like these ultimate shadow warriors, just haunting the Mind Flayers across different planes and reminding them of what happens when you're a tyrant.
Exactly. And their rebellion was more than just a physical victory, you know? It was a psychological blow. It shattered the Mind Flayers' idea that they were all powerful and forced them to retreat into the Underdark. And it also showed that they can be vulnerable, even with their psionic might and their incredible cunning, they can still be overthrown.
So the Githyankis aren't just some historical footnote.
Right.
They're actually a key to understanding the whole Mind Flayer psyche. They represent that possibility of resistance.
Yeah.
That even the most terrifying creatures can be challenged and defeated.
That's a great point. And it leads to an even more fascinating question. What is it that drives the Mind Flayer's hunger for domination? Is it just about survival, or is there something deeper, something more philosophical going on?
That is the question, isn't it?
It is.
And we are going to answer it. But first, I think it's time to delve into the truly terrifying aspect of the Mind Flayer,
Okay.
their psionic powers.
Let's get into those psionic powers. I mean, everyone's heard of the Mind Blast, right? That cone of psychic energy that just shuts down a creature's mind.
Oh, yeah.
Leaves them completely stunned.
It's iconic.
It is. It's like their signature move, their calling card.
Oh, for sure. It's nightmare fuel. Like, picture this. You're in a dark cavern, and all of a sudden, bam, your mind goes blank.
Yeah.
You're totally helpless as they drag you back to their lair. Yeah.
It really shows how those powers are tied to their predatory nature. But the Mind Blast is just the beginning.
Oh, there's more.
So much more.
Okay, lay it on me. What else can these brainy baddies do?
Well, for one, they can levitate.
Makes sense?
Yeah, super useful for getting around those tricky underdark tunnels. And of course, there's telepathy.
Right.
They use it to communicate with each other, plan their attacks, and they can even use it to probe the minds of their victims.
I bet that makes interrogation a lot easier.
Oh, absolutely.
Way more terrifying.
Yeah, no need for thumb screws when you can just rip someone's secrets right out of their head.
Yikes. Okay, but it gets even creepier than that, right?
Oh, yeah, it gets much worse. They can actually dominate the minds of weaker creatures, basically turn them into puppets.
So it's not just about raw psychic power, it's about control.
It is. It's about bending others to their will.
That's scary.
And their abilities go even further than manipulation. They can induce fear, even madness, make their enemies turn on each other, or just break down completely.
Psychological warfare.
Exactly. It's like they weaponized every part of the mind, turned our own thoughts and emotions against us.
It's messed up.
Yeah.
And what about plane shifting?
Right. That's their ability to basically teleport across dimensions.
So that's how they got away from the Githyanki.
It is. It's how they escaped the uprising and set up those strongholds in the Underdark. But it also suggests a deeper connection to reality itself, a level of mastery over psionics that very few other creatures have.
Makes them seem pretty unstoppable.
Right.
But let's get back to their motivations for a second. What is it that makes them use these powers in such a ruthless way? The sources seem to point to a totally different worldview, a totally different idea of what's right and wrong.
Yeah, their logic is almost impossible to grasp. They honestly believe they're superior to every other being out there. They think they have a right to rule the multiverse, even that it's their duty.
It's like a cosmic superiority complex.
Yeah, and their psionic powers are just tools to reach that goal.
And that makes the whole brain-eating thing even more disturbing.
Right, because it's not just about feeding themselves, it's about taking in the knowledge and experiences of their victims.
So messed up.
They think that by consuming those brains, they're gaining wisdom and becoming more powerful, closer to being gods.
That's terrifying. To think that your essence, your memories, your entire identity could be devoured by something that sees you as nothing more than a walking meal.
It really highlights how alien their morality is. It's not that they're evil exactly. It's more like their idea of good and bad is just so far from ours that we can't even wrap our heads around it.
So to recap, we've got these creatures with a completely warped sense of morality, almost godlike powers, and an insatiable hunger for brains.
Yeah.
But what about their society? How does that actually work? I know we touched on it before, but I think we need to take a deeper dive into that whole collective consciousness thing.
Yeah, we need to talk about the elder brain.
Okay, yeah.
Because this is where it gets really weird and really, really creepy.
The elder brain. I'm already getting chills.
Just imagine this grotesque mass of interconnected illithid brains. It's floating in a pool of briny fluid, just pulsing with psychic energy.
Okay, this is bad.
It's the central intelligence of the whole Mind Flayer colony, a hive mind that connects every single one of them into a single consciousness.
So each Mind Flayer is like a neuron in this giant brain.
That's a perfect way to put it. And what that means is that even though individual Mind Flayers are intelligent on their own, ultimately they're totally subservient to the will of the elder brain. Their thoughts, their actions, even their emotions are all filtered and controlled by this one entity.
So it's like a giant hive mind with the elder brain as the queen bee,
It-
calling all the shots and making sure everyone stays in line.
Exactly. And that's where their whole rigid social structure comes in. They have all these specialized castes, each with a specific job to do.
Keeping the colony running.
Right, and serving the elder brain.
So you've got your warriors, your scientists, your brain chefs. I don't even want to know what those guys do.
It's a terrifyingly efficient system.
But it also makes you wonder, what does it actually feel like to be connected to an elder brain? Do individual mind flayers have any sense of self, any free will at all?
Or are they just puppets?
Right.
Dancing to the tune of this collective consciousness. It's a really unsettling thought.
That's the real horror of the mind flayer, isn't it? That idea of being absorbed, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually, into something vast and completely alien. It's like the ultimate violation.
Yeah.
To have your very being erased.
And it makes you appreciate what the Githyanki did. Right. They managed to break out of that mental prison, reclaim their individuality, and now they're fighting to make sure that nobody else suffers the same fate.
It's a pretty inspiring story. Even in the darkest parts of the Underdark, that light of hope can still shine through. It really is. And that actually makes me think of something else. If mind flayers are these unstoppable psychic powerhouses, how can anyone even fight them? Is there any hope at all?
That's the question, right? And the answer, believe it or not, is yes. They have weaknesses.
They do.
They do.
Okay, tell me everything.
Well, remember how we talked about their rigid social structure, that dependence on the elder brain?
Yeah.
That can actually be a weakness, too. If you can disrupt the connection between the elder brain and the individual mind flayers,
Oh, I see.
you can throw the whole colony into chaos.
So it's like cutting off the head of a snake, take out the brain, the body's useless.
Exactly. And the Githyanki have actually become masters of that tactic. They know Illithid psychology and psionics so well. They can sneak into those strongholds, mess up their psionic networks, and even target the elder brain directly.
That's hardcore, like turning their own hive mind against them.
Yep. And there are other vulnerabilities, too. Remember all those repressed emotions we talked about?
Oh, yeah.
Those can be exploited as well. There are psionic techniques, rituals, even certain sounds or smells
Really?
that can trigger those buried emotions. It can cause a mind flare to lose control, lash out, even have a complete psychic meltdown.
So it's like finding that perfect frequency that shatters a glass. You just need to know where to aim.
Precisely. And that's why knowledge is so important when dealing with mind flayers. The more we understand about how their minds work, their powers, and their weaknesses,
Right.
the better our chances of survival are.
It's a reminder that even the most terrifying creatures out there, they have weaknesses. And that knowledge, that understanding, can be the key to beating them.
Absolutely. It speaks to the Githyanki's resilience, not just their fighting skills, but their spirit. After centuries of being oppressed, they never gave up hope. They studied their enemy, learned their secrets, and they found a way to break free.
It's a pretty inspiring story.
It really is. Even in the darkest depths of the Underdark, there's still that glimmer of hope.
That's a great point. So to all our listeners out there, if you ever find yourselves facing a mind flayer,
Oh no.
don't give up hope. Remember what you've learned today. Knowledge is power.
It is.
Understanding is your weapon. Even against the scariest opponent, that spirit of resistance can never really be extinguished.
Well said. And remember, even though mind flayers live in those shadowy corners of existence, they still have an impact on the entire multiverse.
That's true.
By understanding what motivates them, how they operate, we actually learn more about ourselves. It reminds us of the importance of individuality, the value of knowledge, and the enduring power of hope.
I like that. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the mind of the mind flayer. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? Full of fascinating facts, terrifying insights, and probably a few nightmares along the way.
Probably.
Keep those brains sharp, everyone, and until next time, keep exploring the mysteries of the multiverse.